Yes, just to repeat myself. So please, could you state to the viewers who you are and what exactly it is that you do?
Okay, great. Thank you so much for Mani. My name is Kelsang Mila. I'm
Mm-hmm.
a Buddhist nun, and my job is the resident teacher of our Dharma Center or Meditation Center.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Oh,
Hmm.
okay. All right, great. All right, so thank you for coming for this interview. I'd like to express my gratitude for that. So I've got sets of questions that I'd like to ask you, just so that our viewers can understand Buddhism just a bit more and hopefully use the practices that you do or the techniques or the perspectives that you offer in a constructive way. So the first question I have for you, okay, so for those who do not have an understanding in Buddhism, could you briefly explain what it is?
What it is? Okay.
All right.
So Buddhism is the practice of Buddha's teachings, which is called Dharma, which is the actual protection for our mind. So when we practice Buddha's teachings, we can protect our mind permanently from all of our problems, fears, worries, and so forth. So it's a wonderful, yeah, it's a wonderful training of the mind.
Okay. So, would you describe Buddhism more as a practice than as a religion? Because, some people um, define it as a religion. So, how would you define it as?
Yes, well, we can say a religion is something where we find happiness from inside. Okay,
Mm-hmm.
so it's a little bit of a different view, but that's how we can see it. Buddhism is um, it's a practice of inner development where
Oh.
where we're looking for happiness from inside, and we're learning to understand that our problems are also inside the mind. So we
Mm-hmm.
yeah, so that's really what it's all about.
And most of the teachings are derived from the Buddha, is that correct? Can you hear me?
Yes, he's the founder
Mm-hmm.
of Buddhism in this world, and so teachings. And then
Uh-huh.
Atisha, a great Indian Buddhist master, he put those teachings into a path that we could follow, like a structure. So
Ah,
that's the combination of how to actually practice Buddha's teaching, because he never wrote them down.
ah.
And he taught many, many, many different types of teaching. So we need a framework and how we practice. And that's why we called Kadampas, because Ka means Buddha's teachings. DAM is the stages of the path that Atisha presented, and Pa are the people that practice. So we called Kadampas. Yeah.
Okay. Great stuff. Great stuff. Thank you for that. Okay, and then the second question. So the Buddha said that life is suffering. I'm sure a lot of people have heard that quote before. So could you please further explain that statement?
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
So when Buddha taught that, that was the first noble truth. He was wanting us to understand that it's not just about the suffering of this life, because even animals understand that. But what we should know is that there are countless future lives,
Ah,
and we need to prepare now for them. So that's really what he wants us to understand, our real situation. It's not just about this life. Yeah.
yes, yes, yes. And I also think we can also add it in the context of like this moment, that there's not only this moment, that there's continuous moments that precede this one. So
Yeah.
also taking responsibility for what you do in the here and now. I think
Yes.
that's what you mean as well. Mhm.
Yes. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Yes.
Great. Okay, so then would you say that life is inherently suffering, or is it based upon the human condition, like how we see the world?
Yeah. life isn't inherently suffering. We suffer because our mind is pervaded by ignorance.
Hmm.
It's called an inner pollution. Actually, we have delusions. They're not intrinsic, but we and all other living beings have this inner pollution, this inner impediment, we could say, of delusion.
Hmm.
In particular, we call it self-grasping ignorance.
Wow.
So if we can learn to remove that self-grasping, well, first of all, we can understand that we have it through meeting Buddha, and then we learn how to remove it through practicing what he taught. And
Yes.
so our life doesn't have to be a suffering, but it is at the moment because we don't understand reality,
Hmm.
and we don't understand where happiness and unhappiness actually come from.
Hmm. Hmm.
Yeah.
So going back to what you said it's based on ignorance. Okay, so could you
Yeah.
elaborate on that? How would you describe a person that has that trait of ignorance that creates suffering?
Yes, it's like a confusion. Shantideva, a great Indian Buddhist scholar, he said, we run towards the causes of suffering as if they were our friend, and we run
Hmm.
away from the causes of happiness as if they were a foe. So we remember the things that are not helpful, and we forget the things that are helpful. So, because we don't know that our mind is creating our experience moment by moment, we think our experiences are coming from others or
Hmm.
from circumstances. So
Hmm.
that's the confusion. But we
Wow.
can change that. Yeah, we can change that through meditation and
Yes.
understanding. Mm.
Yes, yes, yes. All right, okay, so let's get into the third question. So now with regards to quantum physics, there's been like a flurry of information with regards to the nature of reality. So could you please describe from the Buddhist perspective, what is the nature of reality? What is reality?
Yeah, so reality exists from the side of the mind. There's no external world independent of the mind. Um, our reality is our experience, and that experience is dependent upon the quality of our mind. So we think that there is an independent world out there, and we're looking at it. And if we were to withdraw our consciousness, it would still remain. But that's not true. Our reality is our own experience of our life. That's our reality. Yeah, it's quite profound, actually.
Yeah, I don't know if you've ever heard of the double slit experiment. Have you ever
I
heard of that?
haven't.
Yeah, so it's a bit complicated. So just allow me to explain it. So it's basically a discovery in quantum physics that states that observation creates the universe. So I don't want to get too technical into what they did, but basically they found out that particles, okay, like the whole universe is comprised of particles, right? So particles change how they present themselves based on observation. So when a particle is not observed, it behaves like a wave, quantum wave, a wave of infinite potential. But then when it is observed, it becomes a particle, it becomes an experience. So I see how the discoveries in quantum physics actually relate to the teachings in Buddhism that there is no reality independent of the observer. So what do you have to say about that?
Yeah, well, everything our teacher, Geshe Kelsang Gyatso Rinpoche, he explains in a very precious text called Ocean of Nectar. He explains that everything arises from causes and conditions. So even the amassing of atomic particles, he says, why did that happen? It arises from karma, which means causes and effects. So we can something exists only because we experience it. There's nothing
Wow.
out there. Yeah, there's nothing out there other than our experience.
Wow. So do you think it can be possible for an individual to know that experientially? Because right now, intellectually, we can both agree that and there is no reality independent from the mind or the observer. But how can one experience that your independent observation is what is actually creating this world around us?
Yeah, so like right now, your experience of our talk depends upon the state of your mind. And my experience depends on the state of my mind. And if we were to ask who is the real Fumani, I would have my view, you would have your view, and your friends would have their view. So where is the real Fumani? It just depends upon
Mhm,
each of our minds.
mhm,
So
mhm.
that's a nice, easy way to experience it.
Yes,
Um, your experience is your experience, and that's your truth.
yes, yes, I agree. Okay, all right, let's get to the fourth question, which is quite interesting. So, do you think Buddhism supports the law of attraction? So, for the people who don't know what the law of attraction is, it's basically you attract what you are. So, if you're a positive person, you attract positive experiences. So, that's just the main gist of it. So, what do you think about that? Do you
Mm.
think that it agrees with it or disagrees with it?
Well, our teacher, he explains that where do all the pleasant people and experiences come from? And where do all the horrible situations and experiences come from? And he explains it only comes from our actions. So our actions, our experiences, and the imprints that are left by those actions um, give rise to experiences. So um, in terms of attraction, we don't really use that word attraction, but what we say is that um, every action produces an effect, and when an action ceases, it functions. So the cessation of an action is a functioning thing. And yeah, if we are kind and loving and generous and considerate, we will experience the effects of those minds. Um, and when we experience unpleasant situations with with Buddha's teachings, we can learn to how to interpret. We can interpret what's happening to us, and then rectify. So yeah, we don't use the word attraction, but we use cause and effect.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. So there's actually a quote from a philosopher. His name is Marcus Aurelius. I don't know if you know him, but he stated that every action echoes into eternity. So I think that correlates with what you're saying, that every action is a process. It's not done and ends there, it actually carries on into the next moment and to the next moment too. So then how would you advise people to be more aware of the actions that they take and to be more aware that their actions are actually causing the circumstances that are presenting themselves in their lives?
Yeah, well, we just do a very simple, like an experiment with meditation. That when we meditate, we initially just try to pacify our mind,
Hmm.
and just through that, not focusing on our agitated thoughts, the mind changes and becomes more peaceful. And so we can prove that what we do with our mind has an immediate effect, and that experience of peace gives rise to the next moment of peace. We can also understand that when we allow our mind to dwell on some problem, we immediately experience uncomfortable feelings. And we haven't even moved possibly from our chair. We can just observe the mind. So from that, we can infer whatever I do with my mind, my thoughts are going to produce an effect immediately. Yeah, and like that, we can just think further. Our teacher said, he says, be your own protector.
Mm.
Don't be your own enemy. So this is very beautiful that we can become our own protector
Of
through
course.
learning to control our mind. Yeah.
Yeah, because we're constantly looking for protection externally, if it's not your parents, maybe it's your friends. If it's not your friends, it's your spouse. If not your spouse, and something higher, something beyond yourself should protect you. But we negate protecting ourselves, which leads me to this question. So, how can one protect themselves? Besides taking the necessary actions that one needs to take, considering the future they would like to experience. But what other ways do you think we could protect ourselves from external forces?
Okay, well, we have to know there's inner problems and outer problems. So we live in an impure world, so we need to understand that the best thing to do for ourselves is to adopt like helpful views. And one of a very precious view is that other people's feelings matter and other people's happiness matters. Other people's freedoms matter. So if we hold that view, that will protect our mind going forwards, and our action be more considerate and kind and thoughtful. However, if we do encounter some hostile situation, we can still protect our mind by holding a wisdom view. And if we need to, of course, get out of the way, move out of harm's way, we do that. But we try to always maintain a wisdom view and a
Mm,
compassionate view, you know. So we've got things from the past that we've done, we've got the present moment, and we've got future moments. But ideally, we are always in the present moment, and we want to try to understand that things are going to go wrong. This is the nature of impure life, a life controlled by delusions. But I can protect myself if I adopt this beautiful view that other people's happiness matters, like that.
mm. Okay, so the way I'm interpreting it is that you're saying that protecting yourself is also um, seeing others as important. And
Mm.
by seeing other people as important, indirectly, you see yourself as important too. So,
Mhm.
which leads to the next question. So in quantum physics, I know I like mentioning quantum physics because the discoveries there actually relate a lot with Buddhism. One of them was entanglement. So they took two particles and separated them through vast distances. And whatever they did with one particle immediately affected the other particle despite the distances. So, according to quantum physics, at the deepest level of reality, we are all connected. So, what does Buddhism have to say about that in terms of humanity, and not only humanity, but animals, the earth, and the universe at large?
Okay.
Mhm.
Yeah. So what Geshe Kelsang, he explains in a very precious book, 8 Steps to Happiness. He says we can think of ourselves like a cell in the vast body of life, intimately bound up yet distinct.
Wow.
So, yeah, so from a conventional point of view, we are different in that we all have different inclinations and tendencies and so forth, but we depend on each other, and that we need each other for many things. And our actions affect others. Everything we do affects others. And that's something that we don't realize. So, from a conventional point of view, that means the way that we see the world, um, everything we do affects others, and we in turn need others. From an ultimate point of view, which is Buddha's um, teachings on wisdom, the ultimate truth of reality, um, everything is by nature empty of being inherently existent. So we can say our true nature is the same. We appear, but that difference we can learn to see, discriminate with wisdom, not ordinary views. Yeah.
Hmm. All right. So then how do we apply this wisdom on the practical day-to-day life? Like, for example, if somebody's like irritating us or aggravating us or trying to deliberately hurt us. So what do we do with situations like that? And how do we incorporate the understanding that I am connected to this person, even when they are doing everything that they can to belittle
Mm.
me or insult me or anything like that? Mhm,
Yes. Well, there is again we need training in this. Okay.
mhm,
So in a beautiful verse, 8 verses of training the mind, Geshe Langri Tangpa, he says, even if somebody hurts me or insults me, may I see him or her as my holy spiritual guide. So what we
mm,
mean practically is, we've got karma, okay, we've created actions, and then somebody comes into our life, and maybe in the office or maybe even just a relative, and they act as a condition for our karma to ripen. And so we experience a feeling of being hurt or being criticized and so forth, but it's actually the result of our previous criticism of others.
mm,
We only experience what we create. Um, so others act as conditions, but the real problem or the real source is our karma. Yeah, that's the truth.
mm, mm. So then every time somebody hurts us or we feel hurt about another person's action, it's actually a call to investigate how it is that you're creating that.
Yes, so we have to have compassion as well. So when
Mhm,
others are acting towards us, maybe in a hurtful way, we can have compassion for them because, they are creating more negative karma because they're actually hurting themselves too,
mhm,
Um, so because people don't know this, um, they respond when they are feeling uncomfortable. They don't know what to do with their mind, and they think the other person in their life is the cause of their suffering. So because they can't control their mind, it just all comes out in sometimes, not such a pleasant way. But
mhm,
it's just basically every ordinary being is suffering because their mind has delusions. So we try to separate the person from the delusions. And this is positive because um, nobody is intrinsically bad. Everybody has the potential for purity and for for goodness, for lots of amazing inner development. But people get trapped in relating to themselves in a negative way. They don't know about their potential. They don't know they have peace inside.
Very
Yeah,
true.
yeah.
Okay. And just to go with what you're saying, there was a quote from Buddha. This was regards to how we relate to people. And I see a lot of people tend to carry resentment and anger towards people that have treated them badly in the past. And Buddha said that, I forgot, I'm just paraphrasing it, but he said, being angry at somebody else or carrying resentment for somebody else is like drinking poison and expecting the
Mm.
other person to die. I mean, yeah, to be affected. Yeah, so it just goes hand in hand exactly with what you're saying.
Yes, that is true. Anger is our worst enemy
Hmm.
because it destroys all of our positive energy. And anger is arising because, yeah, things are not going our way, or we want things
Yes,
to be different, but we don't realize we've got to create causes for new effects. We want to be
brilliantly
happy,
said.
yeah,
Hmm.
but we've got to know that it's happiness is an effect of what
Hmm.
we do with our mind and so
Hmm.
forth. Yeah.
Very, very true. That was very nicely said. Okay. And number six, the next question. According to Buddhism, what happens after death? Because that sparks a lot of fear in most people and a lot of confusion and stuff because it's very uncertain. So from the Buddhist perspective, what actually transpires at the moment where you die?
Yes. Well, our teacher Geshe-la, he explains that dying is like sleeping.
Hmm.
We experience sleeping, which is like dying, and then
Hmm.
when we dream, it's like going into the intermediate state. And when we wake up, it's like a rebirth. So
Hmm.
dying doesn't have to be something we fear. If we train our mind to live positively, in a wholesome way,
Hmm.
then actually it can be, believe it or not, like going on holiday. Okay,
Huh. Okay.
but that's a trained mind.
Hmm.
But what happens after death is that our body and our mind completely separates.
Hmm.
So we can see at night when we go to sleep, what happens is our waking mind becomes more subtle and it goes into a subtler form, our subtle mind, and then a very subtle mind. And then it goes back to subtle and then waking. So our mind is constantly changing, we can say, levels from gross to subtle to very subtle to
Hmm.
subtle to gross, like sleeping, dreaming, waking, sleeping, dreaming, waking. So we can see our mind never stops, but the body is different. The body is physical, and the body is like, if you've seen a person sleeping, their body looks like, they're dead, but their mind is still active. So when we die, our mind permanently separates from the body and it enters a new body and it's a new life. We completely forget this life. All that we take with us is our previous positive and negative actions. So we can use dreams and um, following that process to develop conviction that something definitely happens after this life.
Hmm.
And that's basically what Buddhism is all about, is that we need permanent protection from
Hmm.
future lives.
Wow, wow. So I heard you mention the subtle mind. So do you think that correlates with what people now call the subconscious mind, or does it differ?
Yeah, we can say consciousness or mentality or a primary mind has different levels.
Okay.
And yeah, and we train in highest yoga tantra to want to actually work with the very subtle mind, which is blissful. This gross mind that we have now is like being on the surface of the ocean. It's very choppy and turbulent,
Mm.
and we're relating to our life from this perspective. But through meditation, we can access deeper levels of peace and start to relate to ourselves from our potential and a place of possibility.
Yes, yes.
Yes.
Okay. So then would you say that all the experiences that I have and my memories, do they go into the next life or do they like become obsolete in that transition? Because most of us, unfortunately, we don't remember who we were in the past life. So what happens to the attachments and the memories? Uh, does it go with the mind or does that die with the body?
Yeah, no, mind goes, body is separate. So memory and attachment, those are parts of the mind. Attachment is a delusion, it's not our friend. So as a result of attachment, we might do, um, naughty things, horrible things. And even though that action is stopped, um, let's just say we decide to steal something because nobody can see us, and we think, oh, it's okay. But that action never ceases. That's the thing. So in our next life, we experience the effects of that action of stealing in our next life, and we wonder, why are people stealing from me? Well, it's because previously, yeah, I engaged in that action.
Mm.
So, um, we do have our memory or our mindfulness isn't strong enough. That's why we don't remember. But there are um, highly realized beings that can remember their previous lives.
Ah,
Definitely. Yes,
okay. And that can be attained through meditation, I assume.
yes, definitely. Learning to remember.
Yeah, yeah. And so then would you say that dying in the waking life, this reality right now, is like dying in a dream, when you die in a dream, you just wake up in a new experience. So would you akin it to something like that? Would you compare it to an experience like that? The process of
Yes.
dying?
Yeah, the process of dying, we can say, is like going to sleep.
Mm, mm.
Yeah.
Okay. All right. And so you've been mentioning meditation a lot. So could you please clarify to people exactly what meditation is and why should we actually practice it?
Okay. So meditation is a mind that focuses on a virtuous or a meaningful object, like patience, for example. And the more familiar our mind is with virtue, the more calm and peaceful it becomes. And also, our mind becomes stronger and more capable of benefiting others. So, meditation leads to inner peace, and inner peace is the source of our happiness.
Mhm. So what is the process of meditation? So a lot of people say it's focusing on your breathing. Some people say focus on something positive. So what methodology would you recommend to get into that state where you experience the sensations that you're talking about?
Yes, so meditation has various levels, and there are different meditations depending on our wishes, our inclinations. But in the beginning, we start with a breathing meditation just simply to pacify our busy, distracted mind.
Hmm.
That, that's really where we start, is just learning to pacify those distracting thoughts. And then
Yes.
once we have those distractions a little bit more under control, then we start to meditate on the stages of the path to actually transforming our mind.
Hmm. And then how do we do that? How do I, let's just say I want to be more patient, or I want to be more courageous, I want to be more peaceful, I want to be more happy. How do I attain that through meditation? So do I focus on those states, or what do I do exactly?
Yes, well, in the beginning, just doing a breathing meditation for 15 to 20 minutes, just that breathing meditation has the effect of helping our mind to become more calm, more peaceful. And also, what happens after that is many of our usual problems fall away, and we naturally feel warm and well disposed towards others. Many of our relationship problems also improve. So, just by doing a breathing meditation on a regular basis, we can start to develop a good heart, um, a feeling of warmth and closeness towards others, and gradually our relationships will improve. But if we really want to change our mind, let's say like anger is a problem for us, then what we do is we actually study and understand that delusion. We spend some time to understand what are the faults of anger, what are the benefits of patience, and then we practice in our day observing our own irritation in our mind, and then we try to learn from our surroundings and from others. And then we go back into meditation. We try again to think about the faults and develop a real determination. I must abandon anger. So we use meditation, and then we go and practice on others,
Hmm.
being patient.
That's good. Mhm.
Yeah, and learning like that. That's how we learn. And, you know, slowly, slowly, we increase the capacity of our mind to hold, patience.
Very true, very true. Because, with my experience of meditation, so meditation got me to a state where I was in pure consciousness. So, pure consciousness, basically, a consciousness where I'm not focused on my desires. Although there are desires flowing through me, I can see the thoughts of wanting something, of desiring something, but then when I'm in the state of pure consciousness, I can just observe it as just a phenomenon that's actually occurring within me, but I'm not that thing. So I understand what you mean by the peace that meditation brings, and the openness as well. So would you say that is our original state, or is that a state that we need to learn to adopt?
No, the mind by nature is pure and peaceful. What causes the mind agitation is these delusions. Okay, so we learn first of all how to recognize a delusion in our mind. Let's say like anger, whenever our mind is unpeaceful or uncontrolled, and we have some unpleasant bodily feelings, we recognize there's a delusion, and then we learn, how do I oppose anger? And eventually we learn the antidote that eliminates anger completely when we train in
Mhm.
wisdom teaching. So there's a series of first aid, how to um, help our mind become more and more peaceful and positive. But it is a process. It's like our mind, the purity of our mind is covered by dirt. Buddha says our mind, our Buddha nature is like a gold nugget, but it's covered in dirt. So the process of spiritual life is removing all that negativity to reveal our pure potential, and then help others to realize theirs. Yeah.
So meditation is another way of cleansing your internal world and internal perspectives and everything like that.
Yes, through meditation, we can purify our mind. And if our mind is pure, our appearances become pure, our activities, our enjoyments, our intentions. So, yeah, definitely. There's many,
Yeah.
many ways to,
So,
to purify
so
the mind.
For those who don't really understand, like when we use terms like a pure mind or pure consciousness or anything like that, can you please like just explain what that actually means? I know you said it's like the absence of ignorance and stuff like that. So I just would like to know like the implications to that. So how is it that when my mind is absent of illusions and fantasies, how is that now going to ensure that my life will be happy? So
Yeah.
what is the correlation between that? Yes.
Yeah. So pure mind, we can say, is a Buddha's mind. That's a person who has completely perfected all their good qualities and who has eliminated all negative qualities and all traces. So we call that the state of enlightenment, which is an inner light of wisdom that is permanently free from all mistaken appearance. And that mind has the power to bestow mental peace upon each and every living being every day. So our mind at the moment isn't that. Our mind has this confusion and our appearances are mistaken. So we perceive happiness in things, in people, and we perceive whatever we see seems to be um, existing truly. And so as a result, we're always chasing after these things to make us happy,
Yeah,
chasing after
yeah.
things to take away our pain, but actually, um, that's the wrong direction
Mm-hmm. So the correct direction then would to go on the line of purity.
of going inside and then recognizing that my state of mind determines my experience. So if I have a mind of love, then my world appears in a loving way. If I have a mind of anger, my world appears in an angry, frustrated way.
Hmm.
Depends from the side of the mind. Yes.
So the universe is like a reflection, it's like a mirror of our state of consciousness.
Our state of mind, yes, whatever
Yeah.
appears is a reflection of our mind because
Mm-hmm.
what's appearing is not separate from the mind,
Yes.
although it
Yeah.
looks like it. That's the
Yeah.
thing. It looks like, but it's not.
Hmm.
It's just a
Wow.
reflection.
It's just a reflection. All right, okay, so let's get to the next one. So, in your opinion, what do you think is the greatest dilemma in the human experience? What is the thing that holds us back the most, and what can we do about it?
Mm.
Mhm.
Yeah, it's a big question, but I think for most people, they want to be happy and they don't want problems, but they just don't know how to make that happen. They don't understand um, how to control their mind. In particular, we don't know how to control our desires. Um, and not all desires are bad, but just we have a strong preoccupation with trying to make ourselves happy at without thinking about others' happiness. So um, the solution is to learn to, as I said earlier, Geshe, he says, if everybody cherished whoever we meet or thought about, we would have harmony within us and with whom we met and whom we thought about. So that's the biggest dilemma for our world. We don't know where happiness and unhappiness comes from. And we also don't know how to access our inner peace, our potential.
Hmm, hmm, hmm. Okay, and so attaining that, of course, it goes along with meditation. And I heard you say desire, not all desires are bad. So, a lot of people sometimes get the understanding that Buddhism advocates the belief that, desire is evil, that desire is something that you should not have because it's a root cause to suffering. So what are your interpretations of that? What is the role of desire in our lives, and how do we cultivate this energy?
Mm. So like a desire to meet and have this interview, that's not a harmful desire. But when we have a desire, for something that is, for example, not good for us, if we were diabetic and we have a strong desire for sugary food, then we know actually that's going to harm me. Or if we have a desire for another person's partner and they're in a relationship, that desire is not good. Um, so it's mainly the desires that are uncontrolled because we want to fulfill our wishes and we never think about others' wishes. So if we could learn to wish for others to be happy, eventually all the time, wishing for others to be happy all the time, we ourselves would be happy all the time. So when we can think about others, trying to wish for them, considering them, then our desires that come from our attachment, we actually undercut that delusion. So, because our problems are coming from attachments, we think, I have to have that thing, I have to have that person because they're going to make me happy, they're going to make me feel fulfilled, like that. But actually, happiness is a state of mind. If we have a loving mind towards another person, they can produce love, but it depends on our mind, towards them. Yeah.
So would you say then that ultimately the role of desire is to be of service to other people?
Yeah, if we can use desire, yes, to benefit others, to wish to, the desire to improve ourselves, and use that to benefit others, that is an altruistic desire. That's a very beneficial desire, and that will make a huge difference in our world.
So we just need to navigate the positive desires, the desires that are beneficial for you and those around you, and the desires that are detrimental for you and those around you.
Yes, and just to
Yeah.
understand first, we first have to understand, and then we can try to practice.
Ah, okay. All right. And you touched on it earlier. So I want to know exactly what is enlightenment and how does one achieve that? And
Okay.
and also what it feels like to be in the state of enlightenment, because sometimes people may conflate the idea that they are enlightened, but in reality they're not. So how do we know when we've attained enlightenment?
Okay. Well, as I said earlier, enlightenment is described as an inner light of wisdom, and
Mhm.
that mind is pervaded by wisdom, which means that there are no traces of mistaken appearances. Whatever appears to an enlightened mind appears truly. And that that state of enlightenment, we will be able to benefit without efforts, effortlessly, every living being. So at the moment we can see where we are, it's quite difficult, we can't benefit many people, and our mind has a lot of heaviness, or we can say our mind often is uncooperative.
Mm.
So the path to enlightenment is very simple. We train in, first of all, understanding um, happiness and unhappiness is a state of mind. If I want to be permanently free and have happiness that lasts, I need to remove the delusions, self grasping from my mind. So we train in 3 trainings. We train in moral discipline, concentration, and wisdom, motivated by this wish ourselves to be permanently free. And then we consider others on the same situation. And so we develop compassion, and we train in 6 perfections. And at the same time, we also train in the paths of Tantra, highest yoga Tantra. So the path of Sutra and the path of Tantra, we practice them together. And through that, we eventually attain a fully enlightened state, the state of Buddhahood. And that is the journey that Geshe Kelsang Gyatso Rinpoche is making available for people in this modern world. And it's very practical, and it's something that we can all achieve.
Yeah, and how does the feeling of enlightenment feel? So like, do you feel absence of worry, absence of problems? So how could you describe the inner climate of a person that is enlightened?
Well, I'm not enlightened, but I do know that it's explained as our mind will be blissful, and whatever appears is the nature of bliss and emptiness, and we will be abiding in a state of supreme peace, and also have the power to be able to know what each and every single living being needs, and we can emanate. Every living being has an emanation of a Buddha in their life. We just can't recognize them as ordinary beings, but in our life, there are emanations of Buddha everywhere. They pervade all of space.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm. Wow, okay. That's great to hear. So this experience of enlightenment is actually available for everyone. It's not solely reserved for individuals. Everybody actually can experience enlightenment. And so then that leads me to this question then. Would you say that enlightenment is the ultimate goal of life? Or
Yes,
mm-hmm,
yes, it is. It's the ultimate goal of human life. It's the only attainment of our mind where we will finally have permanent freedom and permanent happiness.
mm.
That's really the purpose of our life.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
like basically bringing heaven down to earth in a way.
Well, heaven is just an appearance of a pure mind.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Hmm. What is one thing that you would like all people to know?
To know that they have the potential for peace and love and happiness, even in the heart of the most cruelest person, lies the potential for love, compassion, and wisdom. So that's a beautiful message.
All right. Okay. Thank you, Mila, very much for attending this interview. I'm sure you've shine some lights on a lot of confusion in Buddhism, and I think everything that you said today can actually be beneficial for a lot of people. So thank you very much.
You, it was lovely to meet you.